on God.
Every description of God that I've heard holds God to be all-powerful, very typical, and all good. And I see earthquakes and tornadoes and disease, childhood leukemia, and I see all of this and I say, I do not see evidence of both of those being true simultaneously. If there is a God, the God is either not all-powerful or not all good.
There he is, Neil deGrasse Tyson, kicking off another podcast live on YouTube of an atheist, a believer, and a pastor walk into a bar. Apologies for being later than we normally are. We're always late, but a whole bunch of things happening, sick people and all sorts of stuff. Oh, hang on a minute. We have a bit of a delay thing happening as well. It might be coming through from that. Yes, I think I'll fix that. G'day, Peter Rowe, great to have your company on this 14th day of August 2024, just gone 8 o'clock Australian Western Standard Time, broadcasting from Perth, Western Australia. Normally beautiful and sunny. Not today. No, spank you. Absolutely bucketing down outside at the moment. If you haven't already followed us on Facebook, could you please, so we can get 100 followers, and then Facebook will then allow us nicely. Our podcasts will also be going live along with YouTube as well. We need 100 of you. I think we've got about 30 or something at the moment. I've spoken a bit about heaven on this podcast before, and I want to continue to do so, but this time from the perspective of us that have lost loved ones and how we view where they are now. Some people continue to celebrate birthdays, for instance, of people who have passed, or they might speak to their mum and dad on their anniversary or any other reason. Sometimes on Facebook, it's not uncommon to hear people say, I sense mum is around me, or I can still feel dad's presence. Or they might just talk to lost relatives or friends in the belief that they can not only hear you, but you might even be able to hear them back. Is this possible? Or wishful thinking? Because it's very, very comforting, I can well imagine. I, for one, have no intention of questioning what you might believe in. I have no proof whatsoever to say that's not happening or possible. Personally, I would love to believe that my loved ones are in heaven and I'll join them one day, but that is just wishful thinking on my behalf as well. Just double check and make sure I'm still being heard with this thing that goes off with everything. I wonder how many people are looking forward to that creepy uncle that you don't like. I think we all had one. I guess for them, those that don't want to see the creepy uncle, they think that creepy uncle is going to hell anyway, so it doesn't matter. There's also the connecting with human ashes some of us like to keep. I have an interesting story to talk about regarding ashes in a minute that we'll get to. In the meantime, let's introduce our panel for the night. Rich, unfortunately, not with us, nor is Suresh, but we have the amazing, relatively unwell, but kind of healthy as well, Luke, and Jace is with us as well. So welcome, Gentry.
Hello.
G'day. You're loud, Jace.
Sorry.
This is fascinating as we continue to unpack some of the beliefs as humans have collected over time, us humans. Depending on the origins of your religion, just about anything is possible. I came from a happy, clappy church full of fervent Pentecostals, spirit-filled, talking in tongues, slain in the spirit, hands in the air, yelling hallelujah, casting out demons, healing, being claimed without ever seeing one, you name it. We did it all. Of course, I also assumed that that we were like most others. Find out that we weren't. Hallelujah. Amen to that, brother. God, I'm going to have some nightmares tonight. It still freaks me out that was me. People going to heaven was a given for me, and I've got to tell you, it's the most comforting thing you can feel. Sadly, there's zero evidence to prove an afterlife, but as we discovered, evidence is not necessarily needed to believe some crazy things. Faith is all you need, gentlemen. What say you, Jace? Kick it off for us, mate. Is it any kind of norm in your family? Do you think that grandma is up there looking down on you?
We are absolutely not a religious family. I think I've mentioned once before that there are two things that are absent from the Jordan family, and one is religion, and the other is another form of religion called sport. And neither of those have any foothold within our household, and neither from my parents nor with my kids. It's just something that we never did. But look, that said, I know that Mum feels full well that she's going to see Dad again when she passes. But that is not something that I subscribe to. I don't sort of debate the issue with her. If she finds comfort in that, then by all means, I have no issue with that at all, because it doesn't harm anyone, Pete. It's not a like a lot of the other parts of religion that I have issues with are potentially things that can harm people. But I think this is one of those beliefs where it's just a comforting belief. You're going to see your dog again. You're going to see your loved ones again. You're going to see that weird uncle again. If Rich and Luke are to be believed, then most of us, if not all of us, are going to end up in heaven anyway. But my big question about that is, does that mean there's going to be a lot of people up there that I really don't want to see and I don't want to spend eternity with? I mean, there's very few people that I want to spend more than a couple of hours with at a time. So eternity, God help me.
Boom, boom. That's not uncommon, though, isn't it? I'm trying to find a connection as to why your mum, you said it was, who believes that she's going to go. There must be some time in her life where she has considered what that means and how it could actually happen, and what you could or could not believe in to make that happen. What is the reason why she would think that is something that might happen, or is it just purely a comfort thing to believe without actually really believing?
I think it's the opposite of any kind of religious belief. I don't think it's that at all. I think it's that she can't bear the thought of the alternative, the fact that he's gone and that she's never, ever, ever going to see him again. That's just that's not something that a lot of people can accept. Even I struggle with that. It is a tough one.
Yeah, and it's a part of the Western world in which we live. Death is celebrated in so many countries. It's completely the opposite to us.
I've often thought, Pete, that what we should have is, long before we die, we should have our funeral and our eulogies, and we should have all of the people who love and care about us give speeches about why they like us so much, because that would be really good for our psyche, really good for our spirit, and really a heartening experience that would benefit everyone. We should do more of that.
Oh, mate, I couldn't agree more. I often think about doing that. Unfortunately, eulogies are wasted on the on the gone.
And 99% of the time, they're complete bullshit too.
Yeah, got to make everyone feel good. To our people watching tonight on YouTube, welcome. I forgot to talk about you in my intro, that if you'd like to be a part of it, and you weren't with us last week, Luke. We had over 50 comments on the show, which included one particular person that said about 8 or 9 things which were just O's and ones or something. I don't know what.
We just figured he was really impressed with what we were saying. Yeah. It's like, oh.
Yes, but without the H, it was just an O, wasn't it? So it was very.
It could have been a robot talking in binary.
We didn't think of that.
AI are listening.
Following on from the AI episode, we're on the radar.
So last week was amazing. Yeah, it was over 50 people, or 50 comments from 5 or 6 people, which was amazing. So if you want to be a part of it tonight, just on the little window next to the YouTube screen that you're watching on, jump on there, put in a comment, ask us a question, or tell us what you think. Is your family or you the kind of person who finds themselves constantly talking to people who have passed for a great deal of comfort? Obviously, it happens all the time, and I'll tell you the story in a minute about the ashes thing. It's funny, but Luke, obviously your idea of this is not in any way, shape, or form foreign, and it's familiar to you, and it's something that you attest to and believe in.
It is, yeah. Look, as the cliched Christian on the panel tonight, look, heaven is absolutely something I believe in. In regards to, I guess, the topic of talk, can we communicate with our loved ones who are in heaven? I think that's a different sort of. I don't really believe we can, and I'm sure we'll get into that more. But the idea of heaven absolutely is something that I ascribe to, that I believe in. And it's interesting. I love hearing what you guys both said, and around people that aren't religious and explicitly aren't religious and yet hold a hope for an afterlife. And I think that speaks to the idea of an afterlife, the idea of heaven being more than just a religious byline. It's almost like this isn't something that was written down in the Bible or in scripture somewhere, and people went, "Oh, that's an interesting idea," and we ran with it from that. It predated that. There's something in us that wants that to be true, And I think obviously with evidence, you spoke about there's no evidence of an afterlife, but really it's one of those things where it's important to remember that the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence, and it can certainly be that it's absolutely well within people's rights to go, I'm not going to believe in that because I don't have any evidence to that. Totally get it. But I think it's not something that people need an evidence for to hold out for a hope, because there's also, they don't have absolute conviction that it's not true because we just don't know. And when we just don't know something, for something like this, and I agree totally with what Jay said, there are some very toxic and harmful religious beliefs that cause harm to others. This is not one of them in its benign form like this. I mean, we can talk a little bit about how people can lose the point and it becomes it can lead to a bit of a wasted life if it's just all about somewhere. But in terms of someone's mum or someone who's lost a partner after 30 years, and they're not religious and they don't believe in God, but they kind of think that maybe one day they could see their partner again. I think there's something intrinsically human about that, and it's something quite beautiful about it. I mean, I believe it's true, but even if it turns out that it wasn't, there's no harm.
You're never going to know. From my perspective, you're never going to know that you were wrong.
Yeah. And someone living out their life in the hope of seeing their loved ones again. There's no harm in that. If that provides comfort. Whichever way it lands.
See, that's that is one of the big things that I support about religion, Luke, is where it provides comfort, where it provides solace, where it provides those things that are missing from people's lives in a positive way. And I know I've harped on this over and over again, where religion offers us a positive outcome and positive solutions. I fully support it. But where it has detrimental and negative effects on people, that is, you've got to draw the line. You've got to say there's got to be a better way.
Absolutely. And I think, as I just touched on before, alluded to, where the afterlife and where heaven, and especially its more toxic form in the doctrine of hell, where that becomes present, that can be harmful because I've seen it all too often where people believe the whole point of faith or Christianity in my camp is to go to heaven one day or to avoid hell. And if that is the focus, well, you're not really making the world around you better. And the extent of loving your neighbor is often just trying to get them to say a prayer so that you're comfortable that they're going to end up somewhere that you think they need to say a prayer to end up where. And then you move on to the next person, or it's like... Yeah,
it seems very insincere.
It does. But also, even if there is a sincere motive behind it, is that transforming the world in the way that...
But Luke, if you're purely doing these good deeds because you're ticking off, a list and trying to accumulate as many bonus points as possible in the hope that, that's what it takes to get up there, that's not, like, I'll give you the example. And, again, the chip on the shoulder here. I'm not a Christian, but I practice Christian values. I do the right thing because I want to do the right thing, not because I think that there's any goalpost at the end or a finish line that I'm going to cross. It's purely because I think it's the right thing to do. Yep. Whereas what I'm hearing from you is that there are some people who are out there only doing the good deeds because they think that's what it's going to take to get them into the kingdom of heaven. And just for me, as an atheist, that strikes me as just being an awful way to live your life. Just thinking that you're being marked by a really big, a big, nice school teacher.
It's like trying to pull the wool over the eyes of God, as if God does, if there is a God.
Yeah, exactly right.
Doesn't know you're trying to put. It's interesting. I want to just go back on something you said. You've said it a few times on these podcasts throughout the things. I want to. You say you practice Christian values. I find that interesting that you would label them as Christian values, as if that's the only place where you can.
Well, it's not. It's not me labeling them as Christian values. It's just the commonly accepted terminology for what that set of values are. Call them Western humanist values. It's much the same thing. We come back to that golden rule that sort of sits within every single religion in the world that we've called the one commandment, the don't be a dick. That's not a Christian thing. That's just a thing that decent human beings practice towards each other. But I'll call them Christian values simply because it helps people understand what I'm saying, in that I do sympathize and empathize with Christians, but not their spiritual side.
Don't do that. Don't sympathize with Christians. And listen, I don't know if there's any comments coming up on, because I'm unsure about the screen I have. Is there nothing coming up there?
No, nothing so far.
I don't know if I'm missing it or whether everyone's just being very quiet, but that's fine. Rich, you were talking about, what I can gather, that there's kind of really two main types of people that are talking about heaven. Those people who are devoutly Christian and they believe that, it's a done deal. Or those people that Jace was talking about, his mum just always believes that that's what's going to happen, because it's obviously incredibly comforting. And we talk about religion tied in. Would you state that God is... How can I word this? I'll just say it blank. Do you think God is about religion? Is God religious?
No.
That's a good question.
No, definitely not.
Good. I'm glad you said that, because otherwise we'd have got a big fight.
No. If God is religious, that means that we've figured out the system of God, and that means that he's not God, or she's not God, it's not God. Obviously God doesn't have an agenda. Religion.
Also, you're saying God's non-gender specific, right? I see where this is going.
God's not binary.
Damn lefties.
But it's religion. The best way to think about religion, and this is helpful for me when I get frustrated. It's like people think that as a Christian, you've drank the Kool-Aid, you're all in, and you don't get frustrated. It's like you have to be outside of it to get frustrated. But I think I get more frustrated being on the inside, because a lot of the time I'm just like, what is happening here? It's like, and for me, it helps understand that religion is nothing more than man's attempt to wrap our heads around and develop some sort of framework for something that we actually could never fully understand. That is something that, by its very nature, transcends our understanding. That doesn't mean it's God is aloof, God is uninterested, God is out. It's like God is some abstract concept. But it just means that when we say the word God, we need to understand if we actually mean what we say, then we shouldn't expect to fully understand it. And that should ground us in a humility when we approach God, when we approach theology, and when we approach things like faith and talking about what it means to practice that faith. And when we speak to people with different ideas about what that might look like, or practicing other faiths, we need to have that humility in saying, well, if God is beyond our understanding, then maybe we shouldn't be so dogmatic about exactly, how
but
this should.
That brings me back to that question that I think I've asked you a couple of times, in that if you believe that, that's outside of Christianity as far as I'm concerned, because as you're alluding to, that makes Christianity a relatively dogmatic human invention. So why then would you call yourself a Christian rather than just someone who believes in a God, in your own God? Why do you need the fable and the man-made stories that surround it?
Great question.
Yes, very, very good question. I call myself a Christian because I believe that obviously Jesus lived. I believe the Gospels about, and I believe that Jesus was the full revelation of who God is. And so then I understand, and I read obviously the Bible back through that lens, and I understand that humanity has always tried to understand what God is like and what God needs from us, and that ranges through sacrifice and violence and all sorts of stuff. And then I believe that in the true person of Jesus, that he did fully reflect who God is in God's full nature. And it changed everything because it was totally outside of what anyone was expecting God to look like. And I think that is the shift that dramatically changed the trajectory going forward. I believe that. But I can believe that and understand that I know what God looks like in the sense of the character of Jesus, but that doesn't put God in a box either. That's not the that's a lifetime of working that out, of trying to imitate the character of Christ, trying to understand the non-violent nature of God, the forgiving, merciful nature of God, and then but that's not saying I've got God figured out either. It's like there's only so much you can understand through the Gospels. It's like the Bible is not something that captures everything. It's not. It's a guide for it points towards something, but it doesn't have all the answers. In fact, it has far more questions than it has answers. So that's why I would call myself a Christian, essentially just because I believe in the work and the life of Jesus. And but that's different to subscribing to this certain doctrine of the evangelical church down the road that says they're a Christian, and because we both have the same label, we have to kind of believe the same thing. Yeah, there's a lot of differences there.
How does that explain, though, Luke, all the religions around the world who also claim to have a God, most likely the same God, either as real or imagined? All the other gods have since gone, so we've left with this one God, and all the other religions, we want to worship this God, but we don't like the way the Christians do it or the way Islam does it or whatever, so we're going to create our own religion. I'm still yet to be convinced of the justification for claiming that Christianity is. I mean, Christianity's got Jesus. Every other religion also has its spiritual leaders, whether it's Islam or what. Go on. I just want to know how the claim works. How you can claim to be something unique with Christianity and the life of Jesus reflecting God, whereas every other religion, it claims exactly the same thing.
Yeah, no, it's an excellent question, and it's a question with an answer. I guess I'll give a simplified answer, but is warranted of a much more in-depth discussion. But
sure,
for me, the work of he's passed away about a decade ago or so now, but the French anthropologist René Girard, he is. Has the most fascinating insights into this, and his work was around basically the origin of civilization, the origin of human culture, and the origin of religion. So not just Christian. In fact, when he was doing all this work, he wasn't a Christian. He became a Christian after doing all this. His insights helped me understand and articulate, I guess, my own understanding around it as well. I think, for me, the distinctive, and this is just why I believe in Jesus, is the distinctive nature of the character of Christ is so different to so many others. So the idea of religion being founded on often on violence, on the basically sacrifice, on a God who is essentially two-faced, right? So the gods, you do good, you get a favorable God. You sacrifice your firstborn, the crops will get watered. This idea, this original idea of that. And violence is built up in it. Communal peace at the expense of a scapegoating a victim in order to bring that catharsis. And then ritualizing that is a kind of the genesis of what forms a lot of religions. And that's what leads to, that has been humanity's understanding of God, always. And when Jesus comes along, he undoes all of that in many, many ways. But the non-violent nature of Jesus, the forgiving, the inclusive nature as opposed to excluding, and the fact that God fully expressed and the love of God fully expressed is seen in laying down your life and being scapegoated whilst being truly innocent and allowing it to happen as the ultimate expression of love, for me, is unheard of. It's unexpected. No one at the time expected it. No one at the time afterwards could really understand it. We're still trying to understand it. The Romans thought it was hilarious for years, for the first 300 years. There's graffiti mocking them because it's like, wow, your God's crucified. It undid all of the religious idea around God that had built up at the time, or even within that idea. There is so much there around the distinctiveness of what happened in that case, and that the evidence. I mean, it did change the world. And it's like what Jace was talking about with Christian values.
Yeah,
the genesis of it. They were originated out of this.
Well, look, I have to admit, I hate throwing these curveballs at you because I hate challenging you on what you so genuinely believe, and I'm not doing it in an insincere kind of way. It is a curiosity that is boundless. So, the story of Christ is 2,000 years old. So it's been around for a very long time, and it's been through various translations and interpretations and cultures and whatnot, and it is what it is today. But there is a culture that's here in Australia that's 60,000 years old, the Aboriginal culture. Now, in that period of time, we're talking 30 times longer than our Western, if you want to call it that. Why did God/Christ not choose to reveal himself to the Aboriginal population for that 60,000 years? And why is it that they had no concept of the ideas of Christianity, nor the values of Christianity, other than the golden rule? They've got their own form of justice, their own Dreamtime stories. They don't have the idea of a single individual God, a la Christian God, or the gods that we have in Greek or Roman history. So I guess the real question I've got is, and one that I touched on with Rich last week, if we were to get rid of all of the books in the world today, every book that exists, it wouldn't take long for us to rewrite all of the science books, because that research can be done and can be proven and can be stated, and suddenly we've got all the research and science back again. But the books about Christianity, they wouldn't naturally be recreated, because that's a story that is a story. It's not a tangible, factual thing that we can prove and create and regenerate. I guess where I'm going with this question is the Aboriginal culture, for all of its differences to Western civilization and its differences in what it values, and the fact that they didn't invent cars, but they didn't necessarily want cars. They didn't need cars. They weren't chasing cars. They have different things to us. So where does Christianity line up with the likes of Aboriginal culture? And does it make you question the idea of Christianity?
No, because I see God in that. I mean, I think if we see God as the creator of all of creation, and as the creator of creation, the idea being we are to nurture creation, we are to be caretakers of creation. Well, even post-Christianity, we've done a pretty shitty job of that in the West. And yet the Aborigines for the last 60,000 years, well, especially prior to sort of when Australia was discovered, when We kind of came and threw a spanner in the works.
Took it over.
Took it over. They took care of the land. That's a core part of what it is. I see God all through that. In a lot of and I'm by no means an expert on Indigenous faith or religion, but in no doubt, in a lot of their stories, in a lot of the Dreamtime stories, in a lot of the myth and things that they talk about, there will be lessons in there. There will be human truths in there, because that's all myth is. Myth.
Yeah.
People write myths off as just make-believe stories, but they're not. These stories contain truths about what it is to be human that are so deep and so great that we can't. That they need a story. They need something like that to be communicated.
But you're kind of making my argument here, Luke, because basically what you're saying is that you can achieve godliness and piety without Christianity.
Yeah, well, yeah, you can. You can. But this is the thing. The whole point of Christianity, we're coming at it wrong. And it's not our fault, because this is the common message that we're given, is that this is a religious system that you must agree with. And if you agree with it, then you're in God's good books and you get to go to heaven one day. And if you disagree with it, or if you practice another faith, you're cactus, because God's not there. God's in this story. And what I'm saying is God is in this story, and there is a lot we can understand and learn, and the role of and why God chose to operate in that time frame, in that space, and through that. I've got no idea. I don't know. But what I do know is, from that there was something in that unlocked this idea of what God is like, and it was transformative for the world, right? It obviously went far beyond the ancient Near East, far beyond first century Palestine, to the point that we're talking about it today over video in 2024, right? In Australia. But the problem we make is when we say God's in that and he's not anywhere else. That's not the case. I think there's a progressive understanding of the nature of God inherent in many different faiths, in many different areas. It actually has to be, because if God chose to ignore everyone except for a certain group of people at a certain point in time, and then a very small linear progression from that certain group of people, well, that kind of undoes the idea of God as well. So why would
it's kind of what the Jewish people believe, isn't it?
Yeah. But in saying that, you look at the Old Testament, and they have a progressive understanding of who God is as well. But there's a lot in there that's no good. That it's like we thought God was like this, but God actually isn't. Yeah, and I think that's absolutely present in other faiths. But I'm not going to sit here and say there is no redeeming quality in the Hindu faith because I believe that the 300 million gods that they believe don't exist. Well, I don't think they exist. But I think that when you have this group, and there would be stories in there, and there would be different things in the Bhagavad Gita and all that sort of stuff that they have as sacred scriptures, that would have life-giving things in them, that would have things that does accurately represent God. So when for me, I go, this is where I see the best revelation of it. This is my understanding of it, but I don't write God out of anything else.
I think it's a big stretch to link the Christian God with Aboriginal culture. I think that's just a.
But if the Christian
yes,
God,
they did have their own.
And if they were created, if the Christian God created everything and created Indigenous people and Indigenous culture and the Indigenous land, and
that's not a Christian God that did that, Luke. That's only your belief that it's a Christian God, because every other religion in the world would disagree with you and say that you're wrong.
But you could say it's a God. This doesn't necessarily have to be a Christian God. The Christian interpretation of the God.
That's the problem with Christianity and the arrogance, not of you, Luke, per se, but the arrogance of Christianity is saying that we are But if you go to Islam, they'll say that's the final word. The Quran is the final word. There's no, you can't say any more after this. So everyone claims to have the ownership. It's such an ego-driven religion that people want to be. Our religion is the right one. Christianity is the right one. I mean, we had Jesus. Okay, well, Islam had Muhammad. I mean, in every other religion, there's a hero. With Aboriginal culture, they had a dream time. They too created explanations to what they saw in the skies and trying to work out all of the stuff and how a river seemed to be like a big snake winding through. And so they did their own thing. Now, they have been labeled as calling them gods, but I mean, I'm not going to get deep into that because I don't have the enough knowledge and understanding of it, other than to say that they didn't. It's confusing because at no time did they apply the Christian God until, of course, the Catholics and the missions went out there and decided to try and convert them into the right way. And that's a part of the arrogance I'm talking about, is that they took their beautiful culture, steeped in incredible history, and made them drop it to take up the Bible and believe in their God. I mean, wow. And I mean, that's not associated with modern Christianity, but certainly the Catholics were absolutely kings at it.
Well, I mean, look at the Spanish Inquisition and the Crusades. I mean, there's some horrific examples of missionary work gone absolutely, completely misguided. I guess, and for me, I only said Christian God because that's the words that you used. For me, it's like I don't think Christianity has ownership of God. That would be incredibly arrogant. And I'm sure there'd be people that would have that position. I would never claim that because God is God. I think Christianity has a unique understanding of it because of the revelation of God in Jesus. And I think there are differences between Jesus and other people like Muhammad and different things like that, which we can go into. But at the same time, I think it's almost irrelevant because God, just because I see Jesus as the full revelation of who God is, which was surprising. Here's the thing: this wasn't some guy who came floating and said, set up a throne on the earth and was interested in power. He was interested in giving away power to spend time with the least of these, and it just upended this whole idea of what power was. We've now reverted that with Christian nationalism and that's things like that, which is the opposite of Christianity. It is not Christian in any way, shape, or form. But the pursuit of power, the pursuit of dominance, the building of empire, Jesus eschewed all of that and then went to a cross. I mean, there is no other religious figure in the world, in the history of religion, that actually that does that. Now, I know there's memes that go around that say, well, there was this Egyptian one and there was this and that, and they have all been proven demonstrably false. There's similarities, as there are similarities in different stories throughout all of human culture, but there's so many distinctives in Jesus. Now, I'm just saying that as this is what drew me to Jesus. This is what captivates me about the story. This is why I believe that this is, because it's so unlikely and unexpected and challenging. It doesn't make sense. It upends everything to the point where 2,000 years later, we still don't get it. We're still like the church. We can be steeped in the Bible, steeped in all this stuff, and still miss the point, like Christian nationalism, like all this other stuff. But at the same time, I do think it is a revelation of God. I think there is one God. But I don't say, well, that's the Christian God. I just say, well, that's God. And
well, can I ask a question of my learned colleagues then? Pete, you having the background that you've got, and Luke, obviously the current belief structure and knowledge that you've got. You've just described a lot of the Christian sort of God and theology and so on. And Pete, we've discussed previously other religions, and Suresh has talked about the gods in the other religions and that kind of thing. Is there a form of religion, and maybe that's the wrong word for it, but is there a belief structure that believes in the nebulous concept of a God, but non-denominational? So it believes in the values of Christianity or Hinduism, that the human values of trust and faith and empathy and caring and all that sort of stuff. Is there a religion that is that without the dogma, without the fables, without the stories? Is there something? Because I just imagine for a moment, and perhaps this is me being a hippie from the 60s and 70s and maybe taking too much cannabis. Why can't we all just love each other? If we've all got the very same goal at the end of the day, which is to care about each other, to move everybody forward together, all the stories that go around it just confound the issue of trying to get to that same objective, the same place that we all want to be.
Yeah.
So
that's a beautiful place where you're at, where you see things as they are. And it's hard to a degree for Luke and I, because we've been bombarded with so much bullshit for so long. It's really hard to see the forest for the trees, you know. It's yeah, and it's a great question. I mean, Jainism's probably the closest thing that I could think of but it's still classed as a religion.
But they take that to an extreme, Pete. It's like, don't step on a bug. You know,
I know. Yes, but it's love and tenderness and care personified, isn't it? I mean, there's no seemingly violence or egos involved in that, and there are many religions that kind of fly close to that as well. We actually achieved something similar when Lou and I broke away from the Pentecostal church. We ended up in Riverview in Vic Park, which is just another happy-clappy church. Yeah, correct. And with a huge band and all the rest of it, it was fabulous. But what we decided to do is get away from all of the rubbish that we thought was just, you know, dramatic, over the top, ego-driven rubbish, and we just decided to have people we loved come around to our house whenever. As it turns out, Sunday morning was a thing that we were all used to. So they'd come around rather than the church. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I'd get the guitar out and we'd sing songs, and we wouldn't bother with the Bible necessarily, because there were people there who didn't understand. I mean, we had beautiful songs, and that was as close as we got to. It was God focused, obviously, and Jesus focused, but it wasn't. Sure. It didn't have all of the trimmings around that kind of presented it as a. You go to Riverview, it was like going to a concert. Yeah, you know. Yeah, and then after a while, you experience. Think, well, yeah. Why would you need to do?
But Pete, it strikes me that you're doing that, which I think is a fabulous thing. That's it's really cool because it's a fellowship. But I also see that Suresh might have relatives that are doing the same thing, the very same thing, from their religious perspective, and you've all got the same objective. You're all trying to achieve the same thing. You're all coming together. If only we could all just say, you know what, the dogma around it doesn't matter. We're all just good people, and we're all just trying to achieve the same wonderful outcome and objective.
Yep, it's a perfect recipe for harmony on earth. And as history has shown, is the very second you come up with a power base like religion or Christianity, it just gets in the way and spoils everything, because everyone wants to believe what we believe, and our belief is unique. There are so many versions of Christianity, of Pentecostals, of you know, the Methodists have got their own way, the Anglicans, the Catholics, everyone's saying, yes, you're okay, we got the same God, but you know what? No one does it like us. At where I used to go to church when I first started, every other religion, every other faith in Perth were wrong. We had the way. We were doing it better than everyone else. Our stuff is more Bible-based than anyone. And it's just egotistical fighting and anger at other people trying to do the same thing. Your recipe and your concept and idea is perfect. The people are not. And that's where it falls down. We are not perfect. We are trying. Some people with humility and grace, trying to just do the love thing, but the world shows that that's not who we are as human beings. Most people that practice Christianity, I believe, are absolute frauds and fakes, as you said earlier, just to get into heaven, as if God's stupid enough to do it.
Am I pointing the right way? I don't see that in Luke. You know, everything I hear Luke saying is, to me, it's not about Christianity.
No.
It's not. And I know, Luke, you believe in the story, and I know you believe in Jesus, and I know you believe all this Bible stuff. But when you talk, I don't hear that. That's not what I'm hearing coming from you. I'm hearing a much bigger picture, much bigger than the simple fable of what I understand to be a man, right? Perhaps a great man, but for me, a man, right? But your belief structure is so much bigger than that. It's universal. And that's what I love about it. That's why I like talking to you, because you don't even realize it. You don't even grok the idea that what you are doing is so much bigger than Christianity.
Just calm down, mate. He'll go and join another podcast at this rate. He won't want to be with us. But you're simplifying it, Jason, which is beautiful, and it should be. Luke, on the other hand, his downfall to me is he overcomplicates it. Now, ironically, you're saying something different because you're hearing it through different ears than what I am. Luke paints a picture of complexity, which is pretty much saying, I know everyone out there is not going to be able to understand what the hell I'm talking about, because it is so complex. It is so detailed. It's so different from what everyone else has said. So he's left in a quandary going, I don't want to simplify it because I love the complexities of it. It is incredibly complex, the Bible, if you dig deep into it. If you read it superficially, not a problem. If you dig deep into stuff, then it is incredibly difficult to understand. You have to be a practiced theologian or be gifted like Luke is at understanding his interpretation. There's no one saying that everything that Luke talks about the Bible is 100% correct. It's his interpretation of a book that's had more interpretations than any other book in the history of mankind.
Yeah. But here's the thing. When we read it simply and basically, it's like, well, the Bible says it and that says it, that's done. That leads to so many problems. It's a complex thing. This is a library of ancient documents that are between 5,000 and 2,000 years old. And yet we think we can treat it like it's a catalog or a recipe book or the latest, self-help book from Joyce Meyer or whatever. It's not. We need to treat it with the respect that it should garner, as we would read ancient Egyptian documents or whatever. It's so I think that's why I bring a complexity into it. I try very hard, and on the fly it's hard for me to do. But when I kind of do it outside of this, I work very hard in bringing the complexity into a thing that's easy to understand, but also maintains the respect for what it is that we're dealing with. Would
you see it as heretical or blasphemous to conceive of a Luke that believes in all of this stuff without necessarily requiring the story and the Bible and the Christian fable? Could you? Because I know I asked you this question a long time ago. I said, Luke, would you be as good a person as you are today if you weren't a Christian? Because I don't know if you remember how I phrased it. And I actually said, somebody who is a good person because they're a good person is a good person. But someone who's a good person because they believe what's written in the Bible and they believe that that is what they need to do to be able to get to the kingdom of heaven isn't a good person. They're a bad person on a short leash.
Totally get it. I mean, at the end of the day, this is what we need to remember. Jesus, who Christianity is built on, Jesus wasn't a Christian. That came after him. He didn't come to set up a religion. And what you were talking about as well about, is there a religion that just kind of wants this and that? Well, kind of that's what the very early stuff was about. That's kind of what sprung up in the wake of Jesus and his life and death and resurrection. And so, what it's become now, something different because we're humans and we complicate things. But I don't see that idea as heretical, because when Jesus came, I believe he revealed God to us. But that wasn't the first time God stepped on the scene. God was always there. We just had no idea what God looked like. And we got it really wrong a lot of the time. We think God's this angry, bloodthirsty tribal warrior. So we're going to go and slaughter this group of people to take their land, and we're going to attribute it to our angry, tribal warrior, violent God, because we think that's the respectful thing to do. And we're going to tell stories about that, and one day it's going to be written down in the Bible, And then a preacher is going to get up there and talk about in Joshua 7 how they go and they do this and rah, 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 and think that's what God looks like, but it's not. That's just what they thought God looked like. So I think Jesus reveals what God actually looks like. And I think that is absolutely revolutionary because of how he did it. And it was not what anyone was expecting. But that doesn't mean that God wasn't around before that. So I think you can not have an understanding of Jesus and not a revelation of that. You cannot be a Christian and you can still have a relationship with God. I think the indigenous cultures 50,000 years ago, well before any of this was even thought of, had a relationship with God. Do you know what I mean? I don't think God just showed up on the scene when Jesus. And
in
here's
some
the
way,
thing.
shape, or form, though, Luke, does it make you feel like you're kind of expending a lot of energy on something that you don't need to?
Guys,
Not at all.
can I just jump in for a sec? I've just been checking out, that's why I disappeared, to see whether we're actually on air. Do you know how to check, Luke, to make sure? If there's anyone out there who's listening to us, can make just a comment, just jump on and just say anything, because we've got 0 comments come up, which is very unusual considering there's over 50 last week. If anyone's listening and can hear us on YouTube, it says it's recording, it says it's playing, it says everything, but Lou just tried to find it on her mobile and she couldn't. Can someone just jump on our comment section and just say hi, so we know? Otherwise, we get to spend an hour and a half just talking among ourselves, which is
That's all right. I enjoy it.
what do you think, Luke? Any indication that would tell us that we're not? I mean, it's got the end recording button is up there to push. It's got recording 5325 in the corner.
I'll jump on YouTube now and have a look.
Yeah, I'm just having a look now as well.
Okay. Lou couldn't find anything.
Just looking at.
So if you are watching, although no one's put a comment on, it could very well indicate that we.
Oh, sorry. Just having a look at what we've got live.
Everything looks.
I can't.
Yeah,
I can't see it on it. I can't see a live
I can't
stream.
see it either. Yep. Hang on, live. So, no, 6 days ago was the last live event that we had. We're not live at the moment. Sorry. Every time I go to that page, it auto launches. Yeah, no, we're not live. Bother. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. We can just post it.
It's still recording it, I assume.
It says it's recording, but I'm just wondering why it wouldn't be. Well, it wouldn't be live. I don't know what else I could have done.
Latest.
Play the intro, hit record.
Community. Yeah, I don't know. For goodness sake, every time. You know what this is, Pete? This is God punishing you for being a blasphemer and a heresiarch.
Restart recording. No, we don't want to do that.
I would just leave it recording.
Yeah.
It must just be not set up to stream, maybe because Rich normally does. He must have done something.
Well, 3 things that didn't happen tonight. One is he didn't send through a stream for us, a new one. 2 is there's no promotion on Facebook that he normally does, and there's no promotion on YouTube that he normally does. So when I saw all that, I thought,
sack him, I reckon.
Yeah, get rid of him. Well, at least cut his pay.
Yeah. Give him a verbal warning.
Okay.
But look, it's recording, so then we can just post it up and just say.
So if you are watching this, which is a replay of the recording, we apologise for the temporary break in understanding, but We don't think this is actually going to air live, but it is still being recorded, so it will both be on Facebook and YouTube. Hopefully, fingers
And
crossed.
still chucking the comments, any questions, comments, so we can just get back to them delayed. It'll be like the olden days when we would post. You'd have to write in.
The olden days. New edit loud. Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand. I don't know what else. Everything seems to be working normally. So look, let me go back to the whole thing that inspired this, guys. So sorry what you were talking about. I can't remember where you were at, but we can go back to it again if you want. But I just wanted to just talk about this particular thing because it's of great interest. People talk to the death believing that they can do things on earth. I think that's amazing. Let me tell you about a story of a lady on a show last night where you can win money by guessing where the big money isn't. They're in gold cases. It's called Deal or No Deal. There's a prize up to $100,000. You have to pick the cases that are just low amounts of money. I've talked a little bit about this before. Now, this lady was getting all the wrong answers and the wrong cases. Opened up the cases that are green, which have got all the money, and as soon as you open up, that's it. You've lost it. You can't get it. Now, after the ad break, they came back. She had a glass object in her hand. The host asked what it was, and she said it's good luck for her. She bought her mum's ashes in this little kind of crystal glass thing. It's kind of cute. To which she proceeded to ask her mum to inspire her to pick the right case. She did. She got a low number, which is what she was after. So she credited her mum for having some power, I'm assuming, to be able to either look inside the case or to just know which case had the low amount of money in it, and she picked the right one. Now, that's fine and dandy. It was a pure coincidence, or was it? So we thought, well, let's watch. She'll do the same thing again. The strangest thing was that she didn't follow up by asking mum again, nor did she for the game. And ironically, she picked the wrong cases and ended up getting rid of all the big money, which I thought was very strange. But why do we give so much mystical power to people who didn't have any power on earth, but suddenly in death they do? And I guess the Catholics are the most guilty of giving authority to Mary to grant prayers with seemingly no reason whatsoever other than she was allegedly the mother of Christ, a very disputable claim, of course. And now hubby Joseph, of course, wasn't left out. He too, according to the Catholics, had the same power. I mean, just chuck in anyone you like, Pope. Make it up as you go along, mate. It's all good. The whole thing is crazy enough as it is the whole thing is crazy enough as it is, let alone giving the power to random people. So I just wanted to talk just a bit about disbelief. And you see it on Facebook all the time. People talking to their mum, and I can sense mum is next to me. I can sense dad is next to me, and that whole thing which I talked about in the intro. But it just seems to be so much. If you're looking for people talking about things that you don't necessarily are true, you'll find them everywhere. Facebook is rich with people that I know. Do you guys actually think that they honestly believe that they're talking to their mum and mum's looking down from heaven and it makes them feel secure? They honestly believe it, or just purely it's just a comfort thing, like a doll or a little rabbit or a
Wishful thinking.
Yeah.
It's both.
It's what?
It's both. Yeah, I think they would genuinely believe that they're in heaven, or but I also think it's a comfort thing.
Yeah.
You know? I think the brain is it's pretty powerful. You know, you mentioned the video that I did a few weeks back, and I spoke a lot about that, the power of the brain and stories and what it does. Now, I'm saying this, and I'm not saying that heaven doesn't exist and we just make something up. But what I'm saying is, even if heaven does exist, which I believe it does, to cope, we can often think that, I just got 3 green lights in a row. My recently auntie must be smiling down on me. Now, not everyone will think that. even if they do believe that Auntie Mary is up in heaven, but
Yeah.
maybe some people need to believe that. Maybe they need
Yeah.
proof. Maybe there's something in them they're
Yeah.
thinking, I think she's up there, but I'm not sure. If I just had proof or confirmation, then I would that's just what I need to be secure in it. Oh, 3 green lights. Oh, that's definitely it. It's not. There's no
Yeah.
basis. But at the same time, we create what we need to create.
We create patterns. We do. Pete, I saw a YouTube video the other day, which it filled me with joy. I love YouTube videos that express the best of humanity. There was a woman who was clearly in the US, and in the US, the petrol bowsers work a little bit differently to what they do here. You've got to have the money and basically pay for the fuel before you can actually get the fuel. Completely different to the system here in Australia. So this woman's there, she's counting out the coins that she's got onto the bonnet of her car. And she's clearly in a bit of distress because she doesn't have enough money to fuel this vehicle. In the background, this woman has noticed what's going on. She's jumped out. She's touched her credit card to the Bowser. She's put the fuel into this woman's car and started filling up this woman's tank. She's then jumped back into her own car and driven off. So without seeking any kind of reward or acknowledgement or anything like that, this woman has paid for the other woman's fuel.
Gorgeous,
now, that's fantastic. I've got other stories like that, which I won't go into at the moment. But what really, it didn't upset me, but it just irked me. This woman then turns around. She's got a handful of coins. She looks at the Bowser and she's like, my God, the car is full of fuel. I don't know who did it or how this happened.
I can see where this is going.
So now she jumps into her car and the camera is filming down into the car and she sat there praying.
Yes.
Thanking God. And it had nothing to do with God. It was the humanity of another person, saw this person suffering and stepped in to assist. And it just upset me that this woman was ascribing someone's personal desire to help, their empathy, to an external attribution. And it irked me because that meant that the person that did it wasn't being appreciated for what they did. This woman was thinking that God had somehow intervened.
Well, so the Christians would respond to that by saying that it was God that made the woman give the money in the first place.
Would God make me give the money in the first place?
These are the arguments you can't win because they are totally illogical. I mean, she just obviously had a kind heart. Had I seen it, I would have done the same because that's the kind of thing I like to do. I've done it all my life. I don't know why, but it's at no point could you possibly just give it all to God. I mean, I find that rather insulting because if you're not a believer, you've just reduced it to something which doesn't necessarily exist to the person who doesn't believe it. And the poor woman who did a beautiful thing thinks, great, okay, so that was a waste of time. But she wouldn't have done it for reward.
No,
she
wouldn't have known.
Yeah. No.
Here's the cool thing, right? This is my 2 cents on that. In no way do I think, let's give the glory to God because God whispered into this other Good Samaritan's ear and told and inspired her to go do that. And then, in fact, I think God's perspective would be agreeing with exactly what you're saying, Jace, about, don't give it to me, give it to the loving your neighbor, but the humanity. And that for me, and as a Christian, I bring this back to Jesus because these are some of the distinctives that it captivates me about the life of Jesus and the character of Jesus is that when they asked him, what is the whole point? What's the greatest command? Thinking it's only got to be about God, right? Because that's what it's all about. It's all about how do we worship God? And he's gone, yep, love the God with all your heart and all your soul and all your might and love your neighbor as yourself. 1 commandment, right? That's not 2. Jesus goes, no. If you want to love God, love your neighbor. The best way to love God, you want to know what God wants? Love your neighbor. So in a weird way, and I'm not saying God orchestrated this moment, I agree with you 100%, but in a weird way, what that woman has done in loving her neighbor in that way, is exactly the framework for what it is that God wants, right? Now,
Yep.
you know,
No, you can't. No, you can't sell that up as a glorification of God because someone did something nice. That's
what do you mean?
That's
Well,
like, I mean, as an example, me as a heretic,
But
I do
Jesus-
stuff like that. I've paid for other people's shopping. And
Yeah.
like, I would argue as an atheist, it's got nothing to do with God. I did it because I saw someone suffering and thought I could help.
And I'm not saying that.
But I understand your argument.
Your argument would work brilliantly well, Luke, if Jesus was the only nice person that ever did anything on earth. But he's just a part of a massive list of people who've done incredible things, who said incredible things, who did amazing things for other people. There's nothing unique about it other than he was recorded more,
No, there's
probably,
plenty
than a lot of
unique
people.
And it's more than just being a nice guy. But I don't want to get
No,
sidetracked.
well, we're talking about the nice guy bit, though. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, I'm not saying that God should get the glory for that. What I'm saying is we need to reorient our understanding of what God actually wants. I don't think God is some guy with a white beard on a throne waiting for people to get down on their knees and thank him for all of the benevolent work that's being done. I think God's more like on the ground at the same level where Jace is going, guys, what are you doing? We need to understand and like the humanity of what's going on here.
Right.
And
It's kind of like,
appreciate that.
guys, we're a team. Work together.
Yeah.
Come on.
And repay that in kind. And imagine what would happen if we just did that. Now, the thing is, that woman gets in her car and goes, that was a miracle, right? God's done that. Well, that's not as transformative. That might help her faith or whatever, but, you know, that might make
What's
it
the
pray
opposite,
harder
Luke?
for a miracle, but that's not
Because-
going to make her go and pay for someone else's fuel next time. If she understood that someone else came and did it, then she was like, well, I'm
That's
going to
exactly right. Because
And
now
that-
she's going to think, oh, the next time I'm in that situation, God will help me again.
Yeah. So Pete, I'm not trying to sneak in like some clever way of glorifying God. I'm agreeing with both of you. I'm just saying we need to reorient our understanding that God isn't some benign figure in the sky waiting for us to praise him all the time.
That is
In fact, God-
that is exactly what God is. You said God's on the ground, saying, guys, where the hell is God on the ground? When has God ever been on the ground? When has he ever been transformed? When has he ever been seen by a human being?
Oh, mate,
God is
we're not
exactly
talking
that.
about God in the Garden of Eden walking around with a big robe.
No,
That's
no.
allegorical pictures and anthropomorphizing God. We can't anthropomorphize God. But what we can do is recognize that the heart of God, in my understanding, I don't have proof to back this up. I don't have evidence. So we're not even going to go down that path. But what I'm saying is my view of God, my understanding of what it means to worship and to love God is to do what that woman did at the petrol station and to continue to do that, to love our neighbor. Don't worry about, praying for a miracle or praying for someone at a bus stop or evangelizing or any of that sort of stuff. If we were to love our neighbor like that, without knowing,
You
their
don't need
religion-
God to know that, though, Luke. You
don't
don't
need
need
that.
God. You don't need
No, you
Jesus. You
don't.
don't need the 10 Commandments. You just
But-
need to
but
know
I'm not
that to
saying
love
you
your
do.
neighbor.
But I'm not saying you do. And this is where you guys like, I'm not the standard Christian who thinks that people have to believe what I believe in order to be right. That's why I'm like, it's a weird fit on this podcast because I don't give a shit if people believe what I believe. I really could care less. Like,
Yeah.
I just don't, because I don't think that you need to believe what I believe in order to get to heaven or to know God or to understand how God works or to do good things. And I think that there are many other cultures and religions and people that don't know Jesus and haven't had the same background or biblical understanding that can do all the same stuff. So I'm not claiming any of that sort of stuff. I just don't care about it.
I'm only talking about things that you are claiming on, and when it's nothing to do with whether we think that you want us to be like you at all. Not in the slightest. This podcast wouldn't be working if that's your modus operandi, was to convert us. I've never thought that for a second. But you're still making
Oh, no.
statements which I'm going to challenge you on, because I think that they need to be challenged, and I think to paint a picture that the only way you can be a good, nice person is to have a God on your side or a belief in Jesus because Jesus was a nice guy. The world is full of beautiful people who couldn't give a
But I never
toss
said
about
that.
Jesus or God. But
I
you
never
are.
said
You
that.
keep putting it up all the time as God is the only way you can achieve this.
Yes, but my understanding of God, right? So this is what I'm saying, right? My conception of God that I believe is accurate, but it's just my belief. It's just I'm just But what I'm saying is, I can only speak from my own beliefs. Like this is what drives me. This is what frames my interaction with the world around me. Okay, this is my worldview. That's all I can speak to. And what I'm saying is, my conception of God may be bigger than the tiny silver-haired box God that is often represented in Christian circles. And so that's why I enjoy being able to broaden people's understanding of that. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe there's no God. Maybe all of this is just pure human kindness. And that's great. Whatever. That doesn't bother me. But all I can speak to is to say, well, I believe there is a God. I believe that God wants us to operate in this way. So I believe that when we do operate in that way, we are actually representing the foundational nature of what we were created to be, whether we understand it or not, whether that woman was a Christian or not, whether the other woman ever understood that that's what was going on. I don't think any of that matters. What I'm saying is, I think God looks at that and doesn't go, yeah, baby, give me the praise for making this happen. You like that? A bit of free fuel? Got more coming your way. You just keep praying and tithing and we'll see how you go. That's not what's going on. What I'm saying is that my understanding of God is in that very interaction, whether either party knows about it or not. So wherever there is love, wherever there's forgiveness, wherever there is genuine human connection and intimacy, that is God.
How would that interaction go for you if there was no such thing as God? What would it be then?
It would be the same. It'd be the same.
Would it not be an interaction of human beings being kind and loving?
Absolutely, it would.
But then why do you have to label it? Why do you have to label it as being something to do with God or Jesus? I don't understand the need. Is it reward? I don't understand what you expect to get out of tying it always into God.
Are we all just labeling things the same, like what Luke is describing as his God and what I'm describing as my humanity? Is it not, like from an outsider's perspective, ultimately exactly the same thing, but just a different set of a different framework around it?
It's two different worldviews, and that's the worldviews are the stories that we see the world through. The story that I see the world through is through God. So when I see something like that, that's how I choose to see it. You know, that's how I will articulate it. And it's not wishful thinking. There's a solid, substantial basis. The way that I've come to this understanding, this worldview, doesn't mean it's right, but it's the journey that I've been on. But I also don't look at someone who goes, God's not in that. That's just two human beings being kind, and that's the good thing. I go, amen, brother. That's totally fine.
That's the objective.
And you go and you're kind to someone else and you share that and you love your neighbor, even thinking that God isn't in that at all. Amazing. It does.
So if that's the objective, if the objective is for people to be good to each other, if that's the finish line, how we all get there is almost besides the point.
Totally.
Like the stories, the different religions, the different humanities, the different fables. We all get to the same place.
No, we can't, Jace. That's the world shows that we can't. And this is, I don't have a problem with you and your belief, Luke, with God. This is not about that. What it is about is the exclusivity. There's an argument that says that as a Christian man who believes in Jesus, my God is right, my Jesus is right, my Christianity is right. I'm not interested in what the rest of the world's going. Hey.
But do you see that in the way that I express my faith and exclusivity?
In what you say, of course you have to. You can't not be, because you are a part of an exclusive club.
No, but okay. So by that definition, the fact that your worldview is scientific and humanist, right, which is fine, that's then excluding anyone who has a different worldview. But you would say then I'm not excluding. Like, it's just
I'm not
yeah,
excluding
and on the-
anyone.
but
How
neither
am
am I. But neither am I. But you're claiming that the way that you see
No,
the
because
world
because you're a part of a club. I'm not. You're
I'm
a
not a
part of
part
a club. You're a part of a club at the expense of everyone else that believes in different gods and different religions, except
mate,
for you.
Rowie,
I
I think you're
don't
stuck
see
in
it as
a framework.
exclusionary.
I think you're I get where you're coming from, and I see it, mate, because I know there's plenty of people in that club, and they loudly and proudly badge it as a club. But what I'm saying is there is other ways to express that faith where it's not a club. In fact, that
No,
recognizes everyone is in that club, no matter what. So the point is not in trying to get someone to say a prayer, believe what you believe, and go to heaven. The point is something completely different, right?
You're
Now,
misusing the word club. I'm using club as a group of people. I'm not saying it's a club in the sense that you're talking about. That's not what I refer to as a club. Use another word to describe a group of people who believe that they are right and everyone else
worldview.
isn't necessarily right.
Worldview.
But I feel the same way, Pete.
Exactly.
I think I'm right. I think Luke is wrong, right? That's my perspective. And I think, Pete, you're in the same boat as me.
Yeah.
But the difference, I think, for me is that my worldview on this is that my perspective is that what Luke's beliefs are and what Suresh's beliefs are and what Hindu beliefs are and Jainism's beliefs are, to me, are almost besides the point as long as we all get to the same place. And I hear what you're saying, Pete, that we can't, it's difficult to achieve that because there's too much conflict and ego and everything else involved. And I realize it's a pie in the sky dream that I've got, that we can all come to the same conclusion, the same solution, the same outcome through all the different belief structures that we've got. And regardless of how Luke comes to that place, I don't see him as being exclusionary. You know, I know that he probably feels some level of empathy and sympathy for me not being a believer. And you know, there's probably a frustration there as well that, you know, I've got these values and yet somehow I still don't quite get it. But the joy in all of this for me is that we come to the same place.
But and for you in that position that you're not a part of, what I was a part of and what Luke is a part of is what puts you in that place, and that's great. History shows, and there is no debating this. This is a fact. The history shows that the fascism side of religion and Christianity and the whole bit is doomed for the kind of stuff that is going on in the world. It is argumentative. It is classically, everyone's on a different one. Everyone they don't even agree within their own group of people that share the same God. It is a
nobody expected the Spanish Inquisition.
No, it's a dysfunctional mess. It always has been. Right. And it always will be. And as soon as people understand that their religion and their God and their faith is not any better than anyone else in the world, this is what we are in for. It's never going to change. It never has. It never will. It's not going to wake up one day and go, oh my God, finally, at last, we all agree on this faith is the right one. Let's go and let's all be happy. Jace, enjoy the fact that you're not a part of it, because I have been a part of it for 25 years, and it is just a ridiculous joke. It really is. It's just man-made rubbish. I'm sorry, Luke. I know you don't feel insulted by that because I know you see outside of it, that's fine.
Your Christianity was slightly different to Luke's, though, wasn't it? Because like Luke's doesn't sound like the happy clappy Presbyterian, whatever it was that you were involved with, like Riverview.
It was.
Was it?
It started that way. Oh, it started that way. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But then you start thinking, and you start. My faith became so important to me that I didn't want to check my brain at the door, and I started. And it's funny. It's like you said to me before, like your thinking is, you know, your faith is so much bigger than Christianity, and it is. But that's because what Jesus was saying was universal. The stuff he was talking about is so much bigger. We made it small because we love clubs. We love exclusivity. There's, you know, it's like, unless there's a line out the door and people that are getting kicked out, no one wants to go to that club, you know, and we do this with everything. And we've done it with religion. We do it with Christianity. And you know what, Rowie, I agree with you, mate. There is massive elements of the church, of Christianity, that needs to self-destruct and restart again, right? I mean, I think you think it needs to just disappear completely. And I empathize completely with that sentiment. I totally get where that's coming from. I see it as needing to deconstruct and then be reconstructed in a more healthy way. And I see this rhythm that's happened over thousands of years, and it needs to continue happening, you know, because otherwise we do end up with things like Christian nationalism, hardcore evangelicalism, exclusionary fundamentalism, all of this isms and all the crap that comes with this. And there's no place for any of it. None of it's God. None of it's Jesus. It's, for me, I don't see myself as in a club. It's a worldview, and I will see this. I'll see things through a worldview. I think my worldview is correct because everyone thinks their worldview is correct. Otherwise, it would be a worldview. Do you know what I mean? And I have reasons for thinking that, but I also have enough humility to understand that maybe it's not. Although for me, I think it is. But just because I think my worldview is correct, that I think that Jesus shows us who God is, that I think there is just the one God, all this sort of stuff. Just because I think that doesn't mean I think that people that don't believe that are missing out on something or are wrong. I actually don't look at you, Jace, and think that I'm not sad thinking I wish he had faith. Like, because I look at you and I go, this guy is loving, he is kind, he sees the best in people, and he makes an effort to live that out in his life, and he wants others to live that out. That is the best thing ever. I know a lot of people who believe the right things and don't have that.
So, Luke, just let me ask you this:
that's more important.
Okay, if that's the only thing that you want, and that you admire in Jason, you're saying it's the most important thing. If that's the only thing you want, why can't you accept that you can actually have everything that Jason has got without all the stuff that goes with it? You don't need a belief in God. You don't need the Bible.
I reckon I've accepted that on about 6 different episodes. Rowie, listen to me. You don't have to be a Christian to have that. All right? I'm going on the record here. You don't.
Yep.
I think there are benefits to,
but you choose to
being a Christian. Okay? I think there are insights.
How can you add to just being a lovely person? What else would you want to add to that?
No, but it's like coffee. It's like coffee. Like, you don't need coffee, but coffee's really good and it makes life better.
You know what? You know, one thing, Rowie, that I would add, a radical hope, right? And again, not a Christian distinctive. You can have that. There are people.
I have that.
Jace has that believe a better world is possible, right? But that without having any faith. But this is one of the things. When you have this unbelievable, the whole narrative of the gospel of Jesus, the cross, all of that sort of stuff, when you have that, you also comes with that the belief that love and forgiveness, eschewing power and truly loving the marginalized, the oppressed, laying things down, strength in weakness, not in power, not in strength, that actually can change the world. And that one day, and it may be 10,000 years from now, I'm not saying it's happening next week, but I believe that actually truly can change the world. Gandhi believed that. He wasn't a Christian, and he did change the world. Martin Luther King Jr. believed that and was instrumental, obviously, in the civil rights thing through nonviolent resistance, all of this sort of stuff. Laying down your arms and all of these things that shouldn't work on paper, but do somehow. Radical forgiveness of someone who has done the wrong thing to you, who don't deserve your forgiveness, can utterly transform them and you. It shouldn't work. Vengeance, punitive retribution, that should work. And we think it does, but it doesn't.
But none of those are Christian values.
Believing in Jesus does not automatically make you a better person, whether you have faith in God or not. I haven't seen enough. I've seen enough. So I don't understand your argument. So you can be good without it, and you can be evil with it. So I'm sorry, Luke, but it's a really poor argument, mate. You can be a beautiful person without it, and you can be a dickhead with it. So what's your argument?
Okay, so you can be a good person without ever finding the love of your life and getting married. And you can be an absolute wife-beating asshole when you found the love of your life and you've got married, right? But just because of that, does that mean you shouldn't ever find someone and get married? Does that mean that marriage is something that should never be on the cards because you don't need it to live a fulfilling life?
Wow,
You don't
that's a
need
really
it to live a
bizarre
fulfilling
analogy. That is a really strange analogy.
Sort of see where you're heading.
But no, but this is what you're saying. Like, this is not a dichotomy. That's a false dichotomy saying this or that. And this is what I'm saying. Just because you can be a good person without Christianity and you can be a bad person with Christianity doesn't mean that Christianity as a worldview is worthless and has no value.
That's
in
not
the
what I
same
was
way
saying.
that marriage.
What I'm saying is that you can be a good person. Let's just simplify this and break it down to the lowest common denominator, so we're all on the same thing. You can be a good person without having any knowledge of God or the teachings of Christ or whatever. It's inherent in who you are. Let's just say that person. You can then be a religious person or a Christian, and just by being that, according to what you said, you compared to being a good, law-abiding, loving, caring person, able to forgive, as if that comes automatically with having a belief system. If that's not what you're saying, then there's nothing in it.
No, I'm not saying that, because it's not a magic. Again, this idea of it being a magic formula. Hey, say this prayer, and all of a sudden you're a good person. That's not how it works.
Well, why you go and wind it back and play what you said, and that's pretty much what you said.
It's not what I said, mate. I said that you're saying it's useless. You can be a good person without it, so you don't need Christianity, right?
I'm saying that in regard to the comment you made. You made it sound like part of the joy of being a Christian and believing in the character of Christ enables you to understand true love and forgiveness, as if that's the only way you can do it. That's the way you packaged it, Luke.
Well, yeah, if that's the way I packaged it, maybe I got it wrong. That's not what I was saying at all. What I was saying was, just because you can be a good person outside of Christianity does not render Christianity as a worldview as worthless. In saying that, you can be within that, you can be a Christian and totally miss the point and not actually live any of that stuff out. But I believe there is value when you do, if you are in that Christian worldview, in understanding the nature of God, in understanding that through the lens of Jesus, in being able to read scripture through the lens of Jesus. It can be transformative. It can be absolutely lead you to a radical hope. It can do all this sort of stuff. It's not the distinctive. You can do that without it. But at the same time, you can, within it, what an incredible thing.
It's kind of like Venn diagrams, isn't it? It's kind of like, here's me as an atheist going, you know what? Some Christians can actually be really good people, even though I don't believe in what they talk about. And you've got Christians over here going, some atheists can be really good people, even though they don't believe in what I believe in. It's like there's these overlapping kind of circles. There's no spirituality for me. There's spirituality for you. But ultimately, I keep coming back to this. We're heading for the same place.
Yeah. Here's the thing. But I see us in the same circle. And I think the problem and it's the church that's probably been that has created this dynamic, is creating two separate circles. And in everything that I see Jesus doing, he is finding boundaries between us and them, or me and the other, and he is absolutely destroying those boundaries. He is erasing them and bringing us together. And so I see us as one circle. Now,
but Luke, I hear you. I don't mean to stomp on what you're saying. I apologize. But I also see Pete's perspective on this, in so much as what you're ascribing to God and Jesus and the story, I'm ascribing to humanity and humanism and love and empathy. And I recognize Pete has an issue with this. I'm saying that they're potentially the same thing, but that we have different ways of describing the very same thing. What you're calling God I'm calling love and empathy and joy. And I know many Christians have referred to God as love as well. And I don't mean it in that kind of cliched kind of term. I'm thinking about it in terms of, as a human, what is the best that I can be to another human? And that's about the empathy and the love. And I hear you saying the same things couched in the framework of Christianity. And I think for Pete as well, that is what I have the challenge with. That is what I have the frustration with, is that when I say, I see you being so much more than Christianity, I see so many of my values in you that don't need the framework of Christianity and the belief structure around Jesus and God and all those other complexities. It's as simple as love and joy and empathy.
Just let me jump in 2 seconds. You're talking about the same result at the end, and you're right. It's the same result as what we all want. Well, not all, but let's say the three of us here all want the same thing. We want a planet and where love is standard. Everyone treats each other with respect and kindness and stuff. The reality is that that's not, as an evolving species, that's not who we are. So that's number one, is never going to happen. But it's not the end result per se. It's how you get there. And as long as there are clubs and people and groups and religions that are doing what they do separate to other people who are doing the same thing, they're not interested in the result. Christianity's basic, and I'm not about Luke, Christianity's basic form, Jace, is that you need to be a part of this. You need to come with us. You need to be able to come and be a part of our group. You need to be saved. You need to be a part of Jesus. Now, that's not what Luke talks about. That's not what he does, and that's not how he lives as a human being, which is why I admire and respect him in spite of giving him a bollocking tonight. I'm joking. But that's what's wrong with the Christianity. Whether you can say that you're not a part of it, Luke, because you're more modern or whatever, the whole deal is that people have bought into is that you must be saved if you want to be a part of our group. Now, you try getting that in a comparative to people who just want to be loving and kind. I remember being taught, it doesn't matter how nice Mrs. Smith down the road is to old people. She's not saved. She's going to hell. She's a beautiful lady, but it doesn't matter. She's going to hell. This is the bullshit that we're saved. And it's horrible to get into a discussion with Luke like this, because that's not who he is. But that is religion by and large. Every religious group by and large wants people to become they're a part of their group. And if you're not going to do that, then you're an enemy, and we don't want you a part. It's just, this is my whole argument is about. It's not about picking on Luke. Luke just happens to be the face who's here tonight. So sorry about that, mate. But it's
not a bad looking face, though, really.
No, but what you probably should do is stop making up excuses for the vast majority of Christian people, because you're not the vast majority, nor is Rich. But the vast majority of Christians that I grew up with, spent 25 years with, are just hypocritical, judgmental, revolting people. Fly whatever flag you like. I've got no time.
If all Christians were like Luke, I wouldn't mind Christians.
Yep.
But the bulk of them piss me off.
I've got a magnet on our fridge. I don't mind God. It's his fan club that I can't stand.
Yeah.
Gandhi said the same thing.
Yeah.
I like their Christ. They're Christians, not so much.
Yeah, not so much.
And I get that. And so what you're saying there around, Mrs. Smith down the road who's going to help, that kills me. Like, I hate it. I do a lot of work, and I've done a lot of work trying to help undo harmful theologies about hell and about this sort of stuff. I'm trying to change this whole idea of what even is salvation. If salvation's saying a prayer so you can come and tithe at your church, what are we talking about? That's crap, and that's boring. Like, that's not, what is this? That turns Christianity into a multi-level marketing scheme. That's nothing transformative. That's a freaking pyramid scheme. I don't want anything to do with that. And so, but I see something more beautiful. And I think, and I'm so happy because I picked up on what you were saying before, Jason. Now I think I'm understanding where you and Roy, the disconnect maybe is me needing God to be this way in order to be this. But I absolutely don't in any way. And I know that if God did, exist, that I would still be who I am. I don't think that I'm imbued with this spirit that allows me to be generous. I think I'm generous. I think that's.
And I know that. That's why I said I would be happy to go for a beer with you, even though you are a Christian.
Yeah. But the thing is with me, right? So but I do have this worldview because I do believe in God, and there's a whole nother thing there philosophically and theologically, and there's a whole, which I don't want to go into because it'll derail us, but definitely another time maybe. But there are reasons that I have the framework of believing in God, and there are reasons that I'm captivated in Jesus, and that why I think that it's just so unexpected, and there's so much more to it that I didn't articulate very well earlier, around, okay, God shouldn't look like this, but he does in this case, and I'm drawn to that. And so, but because I think God exists, and because I'm drawn to the picture of Jesus in that, I then go, okay, well, what does this then look like? And I live out of that space, but I don't think I need God in order to do that.
No, you don't. You don't. And look, here's the weird thing, right? This is I'm struggling to put this together myself, but I know it's going to sound stupid, but I don't think any less of you for being a Christian. I don't think any less of you that your values come about as a belief in an ancient fable. I look at people who hold the values that I've got, that have come to them of their own volition, through their own cognitive processes, who have gotten there on their own without being taught any of this, or being taught, if you don't do it, you're going to hell. Oh, and I know you're not in that place. But I have the utmost respect for people who have managed to, from a human point of view, come to this place. I know you're at this place, and I know you ascribe it to, in part, the supernatural. And I don't criticize you for that. I don't find any weakness in that. But my belief is that you are more than that. That you know I'm sorry for the arrogant assumption, but I know that you know that you're more than that. You know, and I know that, but conversely, I know that Christians very often look at me and probably go, yeah, you don't realize it, Jace, but there's a godliness to you, my friend. You know what I mean? We all ascribe our own values to each other.
Oh, 100%. And I see that all the time. I see God all over both of you. And I don't want to say it.
Get off.
You go have a shower and, like, get him off. And that's why I bite my tongue all the time. I don't want to trigger you guys. But you know what? Like, the loving people, being kind, being generous, for me, I think that comes very easily and very naturally. Where I see some of the distinctives that maybe I act in ways because of my faith and that don't come as naturally would be like loving your enemy, not someone who you're a bit annoyed with, but someone who you would consider an enemy. That's
some people need to be told. We all know that. Some people just need to be told.
But the most natural thing in the world is that we are allowed to hate our enemies, and retribution and all that sort of stuff, vengeance, all this sort of stuff. And
it doesn't have a positive outcome.
It never does. It's and you don't, again, not a Christian distinctive. Gandhi said, an eye for an eye makes the whole world go blind. That's not him quoting Jesus. That's Gandhi.
Revenge can be very satisfying in the short term, but the long-term outcome is always detrimental.
Always. So, and that's not justice. Retributive justice, which we think is justice, is not. The only true justice is restorative. It's something that makes the person whole again, however that happens. Things like that is something. Things like
But Luke, regardless of what you say, you have to agree that some people just need a good punch in the head sometimes.
Yes. Well,
I-
there's the other thing.
I
Violence.
think there's. I don't think it's one or the other. There's always love your enemy, or hate your enemy. That's not the reality of life at all. I don't think for a second you need to love your enemy. I don't think that's healthy, because what that does is that it takes the responsibility away from the enemy who's being a dick and making you suffer with anxiety and stress because you think that if you hate them, that's not going to work and I need to love them. Well, I don't want to love them because they actually raped my 6-year-old daughter, and you want me to love that person? Bullshit. No one's going to stand by that. So I think there's gray areas all the way in between. Yes, you can,
There's
under certain
nuance. There is
circumstances,
nuance.
love. If I get hit by a car and it's a woman freaking out and we had a crash, I'm not going to jump out of the car and start screaming and abusing her. I will caringly ask her if she's okay, even though she's a dick that can't drive and smashed up my fantastic car. All of these, I hate blanket statements that force you into being one or the other. That's not what life is about. It's not what the world is about. And maybe that's
No.
what they wanted it to be like back in the day when the 10 Commandments were just very simple and talking about stuff which doesn't even connect with the things that you shouldn't be doing in 2024. But I think it's not loving your enemy is one of those things like it's a blanket statement which seemingly is a good thing to say, whereas I don't think it has any value at all.
There's 2 words to go with it, Pete. One is wisdom, and one is being magnanimous. And I know how difficult I struggle with this so regularly. I hear what you're saying about the raping of a kid thing, right? That's a completely different scenario, not one that I have to experience on a day-to-day basis. No, but that's a fringe case as far as I'm concerned. I'm talking about my day-to-day lived experience. And when I come across people who act in a way that is completely inappropriate or I find challenging, I very often will step back and try to get outside of myself and my immediate emotional response and look at it and go, what has caused this person to be like this today? Maybe they've just lost someone. Maybe they've just come from an argument with their wife. Maybe, I don't know. I can't be aware of their situation. But what I can be is bigger than that, right? I can be the egotistical wanker who goes, I sympathize with you, mate. I'm not there for you, but I'm not going to chuck a wobbly just because you did, right? I'm going to be bigger than that.
Yep. Now, Luke, you were shaking your head about me talking about love your enemy. What did I say that?
Oh, just the one bit where you said you don't think it carries any substance. And I get it. Like everything you said, I fully understand. And it's something that's easy to talk when you're facing someone who has murdered your child. Like someone cutting you off in traffic. Look, I'm a good Christian. I'll bless you, mate. You're all good. So when it gets to this, that's much harder to walk. And what does loving that person look like? Is it saying you're all good, mate? No stress. I don't think so. I tell you what, it's not. It's not me doing what I want to do to them, and that's probably killing them. Life for a life. And I think all of human culture, all of society, always has been built on we love those that are with us, our brothers, our kin, and we hate them. Right? They're the enemy. We're the good guys. God's with us. He's not with them. And then obviously there's war, and that's what leads to conflict. It leads to all of this, and it's easy to love one another, and it's easy to love God when God's on your side and He's for you, but He's not for them. And then Jesus comes along and says, "Don't worry about that. Love your enemy," and it just flips the whole thing. And all of a sudden, you have to say, "Well, who's my enemy?" Well, what if the whole point is that no one's your enemy? Like there is no us and them. There's us. There is no group to scapegoat because they're not actually at fault. The problem's not going to, whatever problem you perceive is going to go away when we blame it all on the Muslims or the gays or the that neighboring country or this group of people or this whatever company. It's like, no, that's not how it works. It's actually all of us, and we need to come together. That's
a lot of us have come to that without Christianity.
Yeah. Great.
You know, and I'm sure a lot of other religions, you know, they come to that without Christianity. Then that's not to be a criticism of Christianity at all in any way, shape, or form. I guess to Pete's point, and to an extent, my point is that your faith makes, to an extent, you who you are, even though I believe that you are that person even without your faith. For a lot of people, though, I think it's the lessons of Christianity that can help them become a better person. Perhaps they didn't come to the place that I'm at on their own. Perhaps they need Christianity or the likes of Christianity or the rules, the laws and the morals of Christianity to bring them, to help them come to this place. But for a lot of us, some of us, maybe a select few of us, we've come to this place without all of that baggage.
I think a part of the problem is packaging up Christianity as a whole, because what I've learned, Christianity is certainly not something representative of all the people who believe in God or the God of the Bible. Christianity is as ugly as it is beautiful, but to break it down, you don't need the word Christianity. You don't need to be a part of that club. You just need to, if you want a model, just look at the character of Jesus, study him and what he did, and if you base your life upon that, you're going to be a pretty good person. Now, that doesn't mean to say that just because you automatically admire Jesus that you're going to become a lovely person. As I mentioned before, a lot of people fly the flag of Christianity, and they're the most revolting people I've ever met and worked with in my life. It's not a remedy for being a lovely person. But just as we get toward what we should be wrapping up, I just wanted to say one more thing about, I have more, something to do with you said earlier, Jace. I have more respect for people's humanity, as you said, I think, rather than those that do it because of a reward. And I think that's a lot to do with people. I love it when people are beautiful because they're humanity, not because they think they're doing it for a reward or because of fear. Because if I'm a bad person, I'm going to hell. If I'm a good person, I'm going to get rewarded and go to heaven. I think there's much more respect in a person just being a good, wholesome person, to which the world is full of, and being a belief in having faith in God does not automatically make that, and you don't need it to be a good person. If you think you want to be a good person, therefore you got to believe in God, it's not true. It is absolutely not.
That's why I said I think Luke's bigger than that. You know, that's not to diminish his faith, but that's just to say that from my perspective as a human, I see that in Luke without Christianity. That's who he is.
Oh, his belief in God, I would guarantee you, didn't have anything to do with him being a nice person. If you go back to his childhood and his parents, I would imagine he was brought up to respect and to love and to care and stuff like that.
That's right. It wasn't some magical spiritual bath conversion where I went from being like a horrible human being to someone who thinks beyond themselves. But you know what? I love what you're saying about this, and I think the reward system of, or the reward and punishment system of heaven and hell creates a lot of issues. And for me, and this is not how I arrived to that. It was a long process and very thought out and intellectual and all that sort of stuff. But for me, as a universalist, as someone who believes that at the end of the day, if God is who he says he is, if God exists, and he is the God that I believe he is, then hell cannot exist. And more than that, all will be reconciled to him. I don't know the details. I don't know all of that. I don't know what heaven looks like. I'm just Luke from Perth. I've got no idea about any of that stuff. It's well beyond my pay grade. But I believe that there's all that. Now, what that means for me is I then had to work out what my faith looks like when you take away the reward and the punishment. So if it's not about doing the right things to go to heaven or avoiding the bad things to go to hell, then what is it about? What is this? You know,
does it have to be about anything?
It doesn't have to be. Like I said, it doesn't have to be.
What's your conclusion then?
Well, my conclusion is I look at the character of Jesus in understanding the character of God, and I just go, I want to bring that to the world around me. I want to love my neighbor in that way. Do I need to believe in Jesus to do that? No. Do I need to have a personal relationship with God, your Lord Jesus, Savior? Like, no, don't worry about any of that. But for me, I believe God exists, and I'm like, this is how I want to do. I have a radical hope that the world, despite all overwhelming evidence, can be better. And I have a radical hope and belief that even though it doesn't look like it should work, crazy things like nonviolence, forgiveness, loving your enemies, like eschewing power, all of these things, it changes the way that I think success looks like, that I think happiness looks like, that I think progress looks like. For me, it changes all of those things. And I just want to spread that. Now, I think I have a particular calling to help undo harmful theology within the walls of the church. But that's just because it breaks my heart to hear crap and to see people make it all about something that it's not. And it, especially when it becomes harmful and toxic. But, it's like, I don't know. I just think it's an important thing to mention, that faith without that reward punishment dichotomy, I think is far closer to what Jesus was talking about. Now, just because I use that framework to go through and I think it's correct, doesn't mean that I think if someone never knew that and just lived a great life and just did the best that they could, that their life was any less meaningful than mine, or that they missed out on anything. This
meaningful. Luke, that's the word, meaningful. There's so many people who, if life doesn't have a meaning, if it doesn't have a purpose, they're lost. But there's so much more to it than that. Like I said, there's nothing for me after this. So what is the meaning of life? What is the purpose of life?
Well, that gives you the meaning, the purpose of making the most of the time that you have, because there is nothing else. What's the meaning? That's it. Purpose. That's a drive. That's great.
I don't need anything else.
Guys, I think we probably need to wrap it up. I think otherwise we go. It's now midnight. No.
Yeah.
What?
I'm
going to turn into a pumpkin. Stop that.
I would just look. My final comment after you guys you've spoken. I firmly 100% believe that the world is never going to be any different until religion is basically gotten rid of. For all of its good, I'm afraid the bad outweighs the good. 100 to 1. I really, I think not necessarily in my personal life, but if you look at, Catholicism, wow. There's nowhere to start because it's a very long conversation about the whole.
I don't think Catholicism has anything to do with God. Catholicism is a man-made structure that, rosary beads. Where does it talk about that in the Bible? Where?
It doesn't.
It doesn't. It doesn't. It really does. Oh, look! That's the tip of the iceberg. Of course, it's a man construct, but so is every religion I believe that's ever been. You only got to look back at history, at people creating gods to explain things, and how that doesn't seem pertinent to some people in 2024 boggles my mind. I do question the intelligence of some people who can't look at it and go, "Well, this is clearly, come on, guys, this is."
I'm going to ask you one question, Dave.
Construct.
I don't know what link Riverview has to any of these sorts of churches in the United States. When Hurricane Katrina hit and it devastated many parts of the southern USA, there were a couple of mega churches in one of the cities that was devastated. Mega churches, right? One in particular was run by a guy called Joel Osteen. You'd be well aware of Joel Osteen, right?
Absolutely, I am.
Yeah. So there were hundreds of thousands of people that were now homeless. They were going starving. They had nothing to eat. They had nowhere to sleep. These mega churches are bigger than football stadiums.
Mm-hmm.
They had the ability to open their doors and accept all of these people in
so that they were safe and warm and had somewhere that they could exist rather than die. Do you think they did that?
I know what they
Not
did.
a friggin' chance.
No.
None of those mega churches did that. At what point is that Christianity? At what point is that even humanity?
Yeah,
All
that's
they
right.
did was demonstrate the hypocrisy of that type of Christianity.
It had to become humanity before it became Christianity, and it didn't even get past the first mark.
Infuriates me.
Yeah, it's disgusting. It is, and yeah, and again,
just a
let's make
unique
sure that
label.
let's make sure we disconnect from people like Luke and Rich to anything. There is the similarities
That's why I
between these
don't
guys
like-
and what they're doing is just non-existent.
I can't bring myself to think of Luke as a Christian and Joel Osteen as a Christian. It's not the same thing.
Oh, because they're not the same thing. Literally, they are not. All right, let's wrap it up on that note. So if you've been watching all of this time, God love you for hanging in there.
Good luck to you.
We did get to a part halfway through where we kind of realized we weren't broadcasting. If you are watching a replay, thank you so much for sticking around. It has been difficult not having a contribution from yourself, but I guess in hindsight, we can actually, when you see the replay, you can jump on and still make comments if you wish to. That's fantastic. Otherwise, next Wednesday night, 21st of August at 8 o'clock Australian Western Standard Time. Tonight, we were meant to have one of our most favourite, and this is a strange term to talk about a politician, but one of our favourite politicians in David Templeman, member of Mandurah MLA, who was all set to go tonight, looking forward to it. It was going to be fabulous, but Parliament decided to sit. And when Parliament sits, your bum needs to be on a seat and it's not talking to us. So hopefully he will be back next Wednesday night. We'll give you plenty of warning about that. Lovely man. We'll get him to sing a couple of songs. He's one of the few people that politicians that sings in Parliament House. It's hilarious, but he's very, very good at it. He's a very theatrical man and a lovely man. So hopefully next Wednesday we can catch up with him. Thank you so much again for sticking around. This will be on our, all fingers crossed that we've done this right, will be on YouTube and Facebook tomorrow. An atheist, a believer and a pastor walk into a bar. Fabulous. Thank you so much for your company. Thanks, guys. Go back in your corners and wipe off all the blood, sweat, and tears, and we'll come out fighting. Thanks, Jace. Thanks, Luke. Hopefully next week Rich will be back, and it'd be nice to catch up with Suresh as well. But yeah, we shall do it again. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Thanks,
See you
James.
guys.